I'm David Sable, and welcome to the video edition of my LinkedIn newsletter, Imagine. Imagine is a newsletter that challenges the status quo by asking questions, by surfacing questions that challenge everything that we believe, all the conventional wisdom. I don't know if we'll ever get to answers, but my belief is that questions are more important than answers. So please join me on my quest, and perhaps together we can change the world. Who knows? I don't know about you, but one of my pet peeves during this period of the pandemic has been the 10 ways to look better on Zoom. I don't know about you, but frankly, I really don't care. I love the fact that we all look natural, we are who we are, and I think we've all learned so much about each other by just seeing how we live, who we are, hearing the kids and the dog in the background. I actually find it quite important and quite beautiful, in fact, when I think about it in retrospect. I don't know about you, but the pundits, the opiners, the consultants, all those who talk about the new normal and want you to be prepared for the new normal, I would throw them all out. Because the fact of the matter is, there is no new normal. Normal suggests a stasis, a platform upon which we judge and benchmark that which happens later. And every single day, the game changes. Every day, what we believe about this pandemic changes in ways that are profound and impactful to our lives. So do not get caught in that trap. There is no new normal. And that is important because it forces you to be agile. It forces you to think. It forces you to be able to pivot on a dime. Which leads me to my next point, which is really simple. People have talked a lot about plans. Everybody's worried about their plans. What are your plans for the next year? Honestly, I have no idea. Don't waste your time with plans. Spend your time planning. There is a huge difference. Planning means that you look at your resources. Planning means that you look at your people. Planning means that you have many, 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 many options. Planning means that you have made sure that the well is full. Plans change, but planning allows you to be in an environment of change. So we're not in the new normal. Planning versus plans. And by the way, it's my belief that one of the reasons that this pandemic has hit us so badly is because there was no planning. We didn't have masks. We didn't have ventilators. No plan could have been put in place because nobody knew it was going to happen. But we didn't even have planning. So understand the difference between planning and plans and get your planning together and right. One of the great lessons that I've learned during the pandemic is the difference between ingenuity and innovation. I've written about it before, but I think it became profound to me as I watched how people grappled with their own personal lives and their business lives as well. To me, innovation is Silicon Valley focused on how do I get pizza delivered to you quicker. Now, I don't know about you, but the way pizza was delivered 50 years ago was pretty damn good. It came fast and it came hot and it came fresh. So we might have made it more efficient to order, but I don't know that we made the pizza any better. That's innovation. Ingenuity is how do I solve problems with less resources. Ingenuity are all the people who made their own masks. Ingenuity is the company that figured out how to make a ventilator for $5,000 instead of the $50,000 and deliver them in time. Ingenuity are all the parents who created these incredible programs for their children and built just the most incredible projects, castles and buildings and puppets and all kinds of crazy, wonderful things with very, very little resources. We need more ingenuity in our lives. We need to focus on ingenuity, solve problems with less resources. Tech has been seen somehow as the messiah of our time. Tech is going to save us from the pandemic. Well, let me tell you, tech isn't saving us from all the hatred on social media, and tech really hasn't made a big dent yet in the pandemic. What is critical is that if we have tech without technique, it's just so much bits and bytes. So what's technique? Technique is the human part of tech. It's the understanding that people come first. It's looking back and learning what happened in the past. How did people deal with the pandemic? How did they deal back in the day of the Spanish flu in the early 1900s? What can we learn from what happened in the past? What can we learn from what happens around us? What can we learn from people? That is technique. Tech without technique is just so many bits and bytes. One of the crazy things that I've noticed is what I call the geometry of social distancing. And the reason that it's kind of crazy is because it also plays itself out in all of our Zoom calls, and I use the word Zoom as a placeholder. So whether you're Cisco or you're doing Google or you're doing Blue Jeans or whatever, I'm going to call it Zoom for now, kind of like Kleenex. So here's the deal, right? The social distancing geometry, very simple. I am a point, 1 point. That's who I am. Very, very simple. I now take my point and I add it to a second point. Now that gives me 2 points, a straight line, equidistance, pretty cool. And it works. And it works if I'm outside, it works if I'm in a room, and it works if I'm on Zoom. Now I add a third person, and I have a triangle. Isn't that great? Triangles work. Perfect. It's a perfect equidistance social distancing, and it's a perfect equidistance Zoom. Now I add a fourth person. Once again, I have beautiful geometry here. I have a square. Equidistant. Everybody is equidistant, whichever way I look. It's beautiful. Easy to talk, easy to make yourself known, easy to create relationship. The problem is when I add a fifth person, and a sixth, and a seventh. Now I've lost the equidistance. I've lost that ability to speak and to be heard and to share. And instead, I have people yelling across distances that just don't work, stepping on other people's lines and muddying up the waters of collaboration. How many people do you really need in a room? How many people do you really need on a Zoom? And how can you make that work in the best ways possible? The geometry of social distancing. I've written a lot in the past about friends on social media. What does it really mean? What does it really mean to have a friend on social media? All those thumbs up, all the people who comment, and by the way, the people who troll you, not necessarily friends, but sometimes they masquerade as friends. What do we do with them? Well, I always said the only way you can actually judge a true friend is to take a look at that whole list you have. I don't care if you have 5, if you have 5,000 or 5 million. Who will pick you up at the airport in the middle of the night? That's your only friend. I think what's happened, though, over the course of this pandemic is that we've learned the difference between being alone and lonely and the true dangers of getting caught in that social media trap. Many of us were alone. Many of us were alone by ourselves. Many of us were alone with our partners. Many of us were separated from our children, our friends, our colleagues, and we were truly alone. But we weren't lonely because we had people we could actually reach out to. People who actually called us on a phone a little more intimately. People who wanted to know how we were. People who dropped off food at our house or drove by in a car to wave. And yet, there were many people who were lonely, who discovered that all of those thumbs up didn't translate to one caring voice. And if you followed all of the data and if you followed all the information, the doctors have said time and time again that amongst the most vulnerable in our world today were the lonely, the truly lonely, the people who had no one to be with them. Over the years, I've written a lot about humility and the role that humility plays in leadership, in relationships, in life. And I think that coming out of the pandemic, humility is just one of the key lessons. If we don't take this and make it real, if we don't understand that this pandemic touched us all, no matter how high or how low or how in the middle any of us were, then we've wasted one of the most important learnings. Humility is so important. And coming out of this pandemic, humility has to be something that drives our lives. When you don't see people, when you're not in front of people, you're not in a room with people, listening becomes even more important. But not just listening, engaged listening. I've written a lot in the past about how important it is to listen, why we have to listen, why listening is such an important leadership quality and relationship driver. But in the world where we do so much Zoom, engaged listening is even more important. Because let me tell you, whether you know it or not, I can see you. And I know if you're engaged in listening to me or if you're engaged with doing something else. And I need you to be engaged. I need you to be an engaged listener. I need you to show me that you're actually paying attention, but not just paying attention, actually emotionally connected to what I'm saying. Engaged listening is critical. Imagination has never, ever been more important. In fact, I think it's Einstein who said imagination is as important or maybe even more important than knowledge. When you're locked up, when you're by yourself, when you're living off your screen, the need to have imagination is bigger than ever. Your brain needs to expand. So you need more input. You need to be reading. You need to be listening, engaged listening. You need to be watching. And you need to have imagination and use it and be inspired. Be inspired by imagination. Don't get caught. One of the most important lessons, and one of the ones that I want to leave you with, in fact, the one that I will leave you with. I don't know about you, but I've been watching all the advertising, all the messaging from all the big companies, some of the smaller companies, and it's kind of all the same. We're all in this together. And it's the same music, and it's the same videos, and the same basic pictures. We're all in this together, we're all in this together, we're all in this together. Well, here's the truth. We aren't. We're in the same storm, but we are all in different boats. And that is one of the most critical issues to take away from this. If we're going to change the world, if we're really going to make a difference, we need to think about that. We are in the same storm, but different boats. Some of the boats are huge and big. Some of the boats are small and leaky. And it's the obligation of all to figure out, how do we help everyone get to the same safe harbor? Because if we're in the same storm, we need to get to the same safe place. But if you think we're all in this together, we're going to be leaving so many people behind, as we have, and you can see the results of it. So, same storm, different boats, and if you're in one of those big boats, try to help the people in the smaller boats, and if you're in a small boat, help the people who are swimming along because they don't even have a boat. So, same storm, different boats, most important to learn. And again, as I said, it is not, my friends, the new normal. Not even close. So let's change the world together. Let's be mindful, and let's keep surfacing all the questions that we can imagine. And thank you.